Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Cocktail Lounge. My name's Ryan Chetiyawardana, and it's really nice to be back here as Spirits Ambassador for Imbibe Live this year, and to also open the first talk on the Cocktail Lounge. We're going to be here talking about global trends, and I'm here with the lovely Shervene, who's the Northern European Ambassador for the lovely Bacardi rums. Also has a very difficult name, but isn't pompous enough to have a moniker like I am. So, welcome to Chev. And as I say, we're going to talk a bit about things that aren't our own, which is quite nice. I'm not going to talk about any of my own bar products, and we're not going to talk about any of the Bacardi various projects. We're really going to talk about different projects that are going on around the world. Some of the bars, and really some of the bartenders behind it. For those of you who are stuck at the back, there's a big central station if you want to come grab a seat. We're not pulling things through the crowd, so you're welcome to filter into the middle. And we're really looking at some of the exciting things different bars are doing around the world. It's a really exciting stage at the moment in the world of drink, where you've got lots of the different diversification across different products, new spirits and things coming through that you get a chance to try today, but also really focusing on some of the bars and the bartenders behind it and what they're creating. So yeah, welcome down. And we're just really gonna roll through a few examples of different things that we've come across our travels. So one of the things I've always loved about our world is the ability to go to different countries, be able to see new people, new friends, and try their different products. And it's always been, to me, the best way to visit a new place is to travel through food and drink. So we're really gonna do a little snapshot of some of the capitals around the world in particular, places that are draws, places that really distill their locale, some of the spirits, but some of the real ethos and the landscape of those different countries, and experience it through their drinks. So we're going to start off with a little bit of an overview of, hope you can all see this, by the way, because there's not going to be too much writing on here, but it's going to describe some of the little points that we're focusing on and give some of the visuals that will help you understand what the bars are. So one of the things that I've seen a lot more happen around the world is this blurring between the boundaries of food and drink. I've never separated the two, done a bit of kitchen work, done a bit of bar work, and it's always been important to me seeing how those two things bridge. And we're seeing that a lot more within the bars around the world. We're stopping to see this boundary, seeing bartenders working with chefs, chefs working with bartenders, and you're seeing a lot of venues really marry those two things together. And with that has come a lot of technology that's become integrated. So a lot of things that were previously in the kitchen have started to filter into the bar, and also things outside of the world of food and drink are really starting to become the norm in a lot of these venues. So the first up is one that I want to reference from some guys I went and visited, and it's called the Clumsies in Athens. And we were discussing this before. It's like Athens wasn't a scene that I particularly knew anything about. I hadn't, you hear a lot about the economy of what's happening in Greece, particularly over the weekend, but I hadn't heard much about the scene. And so it was amazing to be out there and see all these incredible bars that have a great, it really reminded me of when we were in Edinburgh and you saw a lot of the bars, the closeness in that mentality. And the Clumsies is a bar, it's up against Dandelion for Best New Bar at Tales, and very deservedly, it's an incredible venue. And it's really looking at this bridge between food and drink. They use a lot of local ingredients, so they're taking a lot of stuff from the Greek landscape, and they're serving food alongside their cocktails. They've got a space that changes throughout the day. It starts out as a cafe. They focus on a lot of teas and coffees. If you can see in this it's kind of a patio space where the whole ceiling opens up, so it gets flooded with sunshine, and they get to enjoy coffee and teas during the morning sunshine. And then as the night evolves, it becomes a real embrace of what it seems the scene of Athens is about. It's really about it's a bit of a party city. It was really nice to see everybody so, young and excited by the world of cocktails out there. But they're really starting to use some of the technology within that. So for somewhere it seems to, it's for the first time it's hitting a bit of a global stage, but they're really starting to engage with the local clientele. They're getting them excited, and they're using the technology in an exciting way. They have what they call their playroom. So a very well-equipped lab that sits in the back of the venue, and they use a lot of they've got centrifuges, they've got rotovapes, but they're using this not for the sake of having the technology. They're integrating that into their offering, and they're making it, changing the color of a liquid, changing the presentation to get the local people excited around the cocktails. Second up is a gentleman that you're going to see next on the scene. So our friend Dave Arnold. So his bar in New York, Booker and Dax, is really very much within that food and drink setting. It's focused in Momofuku Sam. So you've got this, well-reputed restaurant sitting alongside a cocktail bar that's really putting technology at the front. Dave even has a patent out on an invention with one of the things he's created for the bar. So he's really looking at these things like infusions. He's clarifying a lot of things. He's changing the visuals of the drink to engage with the customers in a different way. And it's really exciting a lot of the New York clientele. It's obviously a bar that's on a lot of people's lists when they're visiting the New York as a city, and he's pioneering a lot of these techniques. Okay.
So second that we both agreed on was the foraging and locality. Ryan and I get to travel a lot, and then one of the things we always notice is that we get to go to cities, but the most places we visit are bars and restaurants. So we don't actually get enough time to actually visit the cities and get a feel for them. Places like Ruby really epitomize and embody Copenhagen. So when you go to Ruby, you feel like you're really getting the essence of the city, and that sort of mentality and ethos has traveled to a lot of the bars in Copenhagen. You go there, they're using locally fresh produce, they're using local spirits like aquavit, and you walk away really feeling that you've got to really experience Copenhagen. Similar with Timberyard. Ryan and I both started off in Edinburgh, and we're very proud of the cocktail scene there. But what Timberyard has done is they've not just embodied the cocktail scene of Edinburgh, but also the food, their foresting, a lot of the local ingredients that they're using. So I'm really proud of their home cities and really shouting about it in their bars.
Yeah, and I think both of these bars do it in a manner that really, it plays up to themselves, but also what is surrounding them. So with Ruby and Copenhagen, so the new Nordic cuisine overtook the world, and it made people focus on their ingredients in a different way. And the guys at Ruby did that in a very honest manner. They didn't go, right, we're going to go forage every single ingredient, and we're going to make this about kind of tiny little plants that nobody else can use around the world, or ants or so forth. It was really about how they could fold that into their own practice. So Raz and Addy, who are behind the bar, they were also Edinburgh alumni, and they were great guys who wanted to look at all the things they brought from around the world, but reflect it through something that was very Danish, very fitting of Copenhagen. As Chev said, it's a way of visiting the city through the bar.
And it's not; these are not themed bars. You're not going, okay, everything's it's plastered over that it's Danish or if it's Swedish. It's just a nice feeling. It's not gimmicky at all.
Absolutely. And Timberyard, again, to me, it reflects a modern Scotland. So it's not casting off a lot of the traditions. They're using a lot of, well, I suppose, ancient Highland ingredients. They're using things like sea buckthorn, they're using gorse, they're using nettles, but they're doing it in a manner that is really modern. It's very approachable. The restaurant's light and airy. It's not filled with tartan and kilts. It's a very honest reflection of both of these two worlds.
The next one is tiki. I'm a rum person. I've always been a fan of rum bars, but I think that sometimes tiki gets a bit of a bad rep. When you think of tiki, you think of lots of rum, lots of fruit, things lit on fire, and just like a huge party. But actually, if you take it back to the 60s when tiki was first coined, it was the drink of the bourgeoisie. It was the cocktail bars, the upper class ones. It was a real posh affair going to tiki bars. And Three Dots and a Dash in Chicago and Smuggler's Cove get the balance. They still have the lighting things on fire, they have the rum, they have the tropical flavors, but they do it with a touch of class as well. So they're bringing back that sort of element of style.
Yeah, and I think they really balance those two worlds. It was about opulence, it was about this grandeur, but it was a simplicity to it as well. It wasn't about making it pompous or about the bartender. It was about making people excited by these new worlds. And it's something that we're starting to see creep into other venues. So it's not just within standalone tiki bars. It's not within that kitsch. It's not within just simple, like, that kind of irony around the drink. What's nice about it is they're celebrating it. So we saw a lot, particularly over the last few years, people celebrating some very terrible drinks. Mm-hmm. It was great to see some of the 80s cocktails get a bit of a kickback, some of the disco area. There was some great drinks in that, but it kind of overtook a little bit, and you started people making really terrible drinks, and sure, they're using good ingredients, but the drinks are still terrible.
Yeah.
And with tiki, it wasn't about that. It wasn't the irony or the kitschness of the cocktails. And it's something you're seeing, within the Nomad Hotel. this wonderfully grand bar, this new celebrated, beautiful, very classic setting, and they're folding tiki drinks in there. They've got something that's over the top and fantastic, and yeah, it's on fire and it's all the fun, but it's bringing this sense of what tiki was about, this idea of, you know, a little bit of a playfulness about escapism, about breaking those barriers down and bringing it into new settings and new venues. So there's a new one going on at the Dandelion menu. We have a tiki drink going on there, and we're starting to see even within classical bar settings. And it is about bringing that fun back. It's, you know, it's something that we all go to bars to celebrate. We don't only go there for the drinks, and so it's really nice to see that really channel through in different ways. Still big flavors, but with balance to it. So, you know, you can't just set it on fire and throw a load of rum into it and hope it's going to work.
The next one I'd say is quite a new trend that's going on and actually taken over in a lot of bars. And one thing that I'm super impressed with when I go to different cities is not just creating a bar, but thinking beyond that and creating spaces that have multi-purposes. One that I went to recently that's not long open is Himkok in Oslo. And it's a huge space. And instantly when you go in, you see the stills. And they distill gin, vodka, and agave with Nordic flavors. And then you go through and there's an event space, and downstairs they have a hydroponic greenhouse where they make their own botanicals that they use in their cocktails. So they've got a greenhouse, they've got a distillery, they've got a training space, and they've got their bar. And so they're kind of thinking out the box and using their different spaces for different purposes. Same with Heads and Tails in Edinburgh. It's a much smaller space, but they still have their distillery and they have training courses and they teach people how to distill. So it's kind of like multi-purpose, but kind of inspiring and educational at the same time.
I think it's tapping into the idea that people are looking for provenance within things as well. Being able to, you know, the idea of craft was celebrating locality. That was what people really enjoyed about it. So being able to literally see something where it's created, it creates a connection between it. It allows people to understand the process and learn through it. And obviously that enamors people to it as well. If they can see how much people are pouring into their ingredients. It was something that we used to do at Colebrook Row. We had the lab upstairs and we talk people through it. And that idea of breaking down that this is your space and this is our space is something that's really enamoring people to venues. And again, it is about different uses of the spaces. There is a whole wealth of time that a lot of people don't use their venues. We did a pop-up in White Lion where we were like, well, we use it for production during the day. What about if we do a coffee trade and we open up and the same enthusiasm to it? And then you see venues like ABC Kitchen in New York. It's a Jean-Georges restaurant within a furniture store. And so you've got this juxtaposition between the two styles and the two spaces, but you're capturing the same people who are interested in one part of the world. You know, they'll Venn diagram into another. So luxury consumer who are looking at these amazing furniture and things want to then be able to enjoy an amazing meal. And this different use of spaces, particularly, you know, we saw it with pop-ups where people are opening bars in garages and all these things. The change of dynamic between simply this is a cocktail bar setting or this is a restaurant setting is starting to break down, and you're seeing some very exciting different projects come out of that. So again, going back to that idea of craft, to me what was celebrated around craft was, again, this honesty, this openness, this transparency, but also people were really getting behind something that was their own. So it wasn't that they weren't celebrating things from around the world, but it was amazing to be able to have something that felt they could take ownership of it. And so, you know, different places have their different national spirits, but it's not only celebrating what is created on site, it's creating what is celebrated locally. So I've used the example here of Bobby Gin in Barcelona. So it's in Spain, but it's, you know, gin isn't necessarily Spanish. Of course, they produce some gins there, but what was amazing was how much gin boomed in Spain. It became the real kind of center point of the gin and tonic. And everybody saw the coppers that were really drunk and embraced in Spain start to be, you know, they moved around the world, became this real phenomenon around that kind of ubiquitous serve. And bars like Bobby Gin really, really embraced that. So they went, right, the local clientele understand what the gin and tonic is. We want to be able to open them up to the world of cocktails and the different nuances, different experiences, different occasions we can cater to through using cocktails. And so they bridged that. They created a thing called a gin funk. And it was part gin and tonic, part cocktail. And it was a really I think it was a very open way of looking at it. It wasn't about them looking internally and saying, this is what we want to do, and trying to force it on their consumer. What they did was they looked at how they could, again, educate, open up, embrace what the local clientele were interested in, and start to bring new tastes and look at a different global perspective. So this, you're seeing other bars focus on individual spirits and, again, focus on products from their homeland, but also just do it in a manner that really understands the landscape, understands the clientele. I think this is a bar that we're both very fond of. And actually, we had the guys across in town over the weekend. And the general manager used to work with us, and the group's manager used to be actually my general manager in Edinburgh. So there's a bit of a personal connection to it, but there's a reason why this bar is getting such acclaim around the world. So it's the Baxter Inn in Sydney. So this is a bar that is down a little alley. You kind of have to go around a corner. You really have to know a local to kind of find it. Google Maps does not help you out. It's like trying to find bars in Tokyo. But it opens its doors at 4 o'clock, and it'll regularly have a queue around the block. Yeah. It's phenomenally busy. And it's also a bar that, on the outside, would seem really, really difficult for the average consumer to ingest. If you see it, it's got a huge selection of whiskies. But this bar is about fun. It's really about breaking down that idea of a speakeasy. Yes, it's got a slightly hidden entrance, but it's not about being kind of secret and discreet. It's about a casual atmosphere, a lack of snobbery, and this real idea of making it accessible.
Yeah, I mean, I went to it for the first time a month ago, and as Ryan said, there was a huge queue around the back, and we sneaked in the back door, and it was it's amazing. The whiskey selection is amazing, but one thing that I absolutely loved is their main signature serve is whiskey with pressed apple juice. And that was it. And it was so simple, but it was amazing. And every station had a juicer on it. And they were like, it was an apple to whiskey. And this trend has actually taken off in Sydney. And it's normal. It's normal to have a juicer per station. And I think they go through a ton of apples a week.
The guys were looking at buying an orchard
because
they are going through so many apples. And it's just a simple serve. Rye whiskey topped up with the juice of one apple, done a la minute.
Delicious.
It's delicious. And
their GP's better for it as well. But it's something that they do in Sydney, and I'm like, well, you know what, it's such a simple cocktail serve, but it's something that we want to bring back here and do. Just fresh apple juice with bourbon.
Absolutely.
And that was it.
And they also, I mean, they've got a phenomenal bar team, and that really helps. These guys at one point were importing a pallet of whiskey a month from the Whiskey Exchange, which I think was much to the annoyance of the rest of the bars in Australia, because the government conned onto this and went, right, you can't stop importing like this without paying the taxes on it.
They're actually, in Sydney, they've got really strict alcohol rules where after midnight, you cannot have a shot. You know, it's just everywhere. They're really, really strict, but Baxter Inn's the only place that's allowed to, because they're such a big whiskey bar, that, you know, a lot of their service is on neat whiskey. So they're the only bar in Sydney that allows you to have a neat dram after midnight.
But it's also, again, with this idea of accessibility, they have this phenomenal whiskey selection. And it's something that always, as a whiskey lover, it's something that I always worry about. You go into a bar, you see this huge selection of spirits, and you just go, none of these are getting sold. These aren't getting drunk, those whiskeys are getting tired, and they're just like losing their finesse over a period of time. It's not with these guys. These guys hook through these bottles. They hand sell every one, and it doesn't matter whether it's a blend that they just love and they love to be able to mix with, through to some really rare whiskeys. These guys turf through the bottles because they're making it accessible. They're making an exciting place, and they've opened up a very vibrant and affluent city to a whole new category. They're getting people drinking whiskey who wouldn't previously through things like their serve of an old-fashioned on tap or a rye whiskey and fresh apple, through to serving vintage Springbank that we nailed a bottle of. It's a really, really exciting bar. So as the world is getting smaller, you're seeing a lot of different, flavors, products, and also bars around the world start to really communicate with each other. And, this is really as far as the world is completely accessible now. And with that are all the flavors. We see particularly in London with, the completely vibrant and diverse cultures that we have here, those new flavors are becoming very understandable to people. 5 or 6 years ago, the idea of having kind of savory sweet was kind of alien to a lot of people. You'd put things out, and now salted caramel is everywhere in terms of things. And so, some of these Asian flavors are really starting to creep in, and you're seeing some great venues really bridge those things. Culinary in Hong Kong, Antonio Lau is a very good kind of promoter of some of the things that are going on in Asia. And, these scenes are changing very rapidly, but they're bringing in a lot of their local flavors. So we had the guys from Singapore in White Lion on Friday, and they were using local teas. They were using like a curd made from pandan, and these flavors are understandable now. They were, we've come across them in food, so we're not completely freaked out when we get a drink that's like, actually, that's not led by a sweet-sour balance. That's led by a very umami or very spice-led drink. And so things like savory and spicy, some of these Asian spices that you can't pick up in the supermarkets, you have to go to specialist stores for, and things like milk and salts. It's something, yes, they've been actually used in cocktails since cocktails have been around, but they're becoming much more commonplace. And using these ingredients in a way that actually our guests to our bars are starting to be able to understand and enjoy. And similarly in places like Saxon and Prole in New York, this was set up, it's a restaurant bar, and it was set up that the food and drink weren't separated. And to me, that's the best way to devise these things. You don't set it up where you create some dishes and then you add the drinks on ad hoc. You make the two blend together, and they did some clever things, like they did a dirty martini they called Olive 7 Ways, and it has different elements folded into the drink through olive distillates, tinctures, oils, 7 ways of olives, and you really get a very savory balance that makes complete sense when you're having it alongside the food. And it's a beautiful experience. You sit at the bar, you have some dishes, you order some cocktails, they bottle some, you can leave stuff for when you come back, and it's just making that whole world and that idea of savory flavors seamless.
Yeah, so when Ryan and I were sitting down and talking about what trends we thought we'd best talk about, one thing we kept on coming back to is not just what's trends now, but actually what we just love. And you can always have new changing trends, but for us it's going back to your roots and creating a bar that resonates not just with yourselves, but with your local community. And a few things for us that will always stand out is making sure that the drinks are served well, the music's there, and the atmosphere is there. So 3 bars that for me are my ultimate favorites are Happiness Forgets London, Bramble, Satan's Whiskers. And Bramble's coming up to 10 years.
Yeah, and I think that's real kind of testimony to it. So next year it'll be 10 years old, and in a lot of senses that it doesn't seem like a particularly long time, but for the life of a cocktail bar, that's a huge period, and it's a huge period for a bar to still be relevant with as well. So last year they were nominated for Best Bar in the World, so shortlisted between 4 for a tiny little bar that is not on the main drag. I'm a bit biased here because to me it's still my favorite bar in the world. I was there for a good number of years, but I think it's an exciting and it's a relevant bar because it does what it does with honesty and aplomb. It's a very simple formula, and I think all these guys do that very, very well. They focused on the right things. They've gone, right, what do people come to a bar for? They come to get together, they come to meet new people, they come for an experience and ambience. You can make cocktails at home, you can buy some bottled cocktails that make it very easy to make at home. All of these things, it's not about the drinks per se. It's the thing that I've always trained since my days at Bramble. It's always something I talk to my staff about is it's about the feeling you give to people. You're there to make people have a better night. And these bars challenge that without doing it in any sort of pretension. So Happiness this year is up for the best bar in the world, and its focus is on, yes, it makes excellent cocktails. You can go in there and you know that you're going to get an amazing Manhattan, Negroni, whatever you need. They do some great tweaks to their own classics that are part of their changing menu of drinks. They have some great beers and wines, but all of these things are kind of superfluous. You go into that bar, it's a tiny little basement bar off Hoxton Square, and it's fun. You have a great time, the atmosphere is good, they look after you in the right way. Bramble is exactly the same. There's a trend here, another little basement bar. It's underneath the Taylors. You'd walk past it. And there's nothing that's particular about the bar that you're necessarily going to notice. But every time you go in there, everybody comments on the atmosphere, the feeling of it, what they come back with. Everybody who visits Edinburgh seems to go to this bar, and it's got a little bit of a magic vibe to it. But everybody's got that night that they had in Bramble that it seems to be it's fear of missing out whenever you're in town that you don't end up at Bramble, because it's those magical nights. It's the reasons of going to a bar, and they just consistently execute that. They make sure it's part of their staffing system. So actually we have several other Bramble alumni in the crowd, and whenever, actually even when Chris left, he had to interview people. And it was, one of the questions was, what music do you love? It was a big part of it. The team there hosts the venue. It's nothing to do with the drinks. Yeah, they pump out drinks and they're excellent, but they make sure that people are having a good time and they're to make the vibe. The music's always killer and it's got a great feeling about it. And same with Satan's. They make classic cocktails. They pay real attention to the details. They've got all their glassware is chilled. Their ice is right. They've got a beautiful display, excellent spirits. All of those things are obviously on point, but that's what a lot of bars can do. What they really bring is they go back to that fundamental. They look at the idea of getting good music. I mean, I love hip hop, and they play a great, straight up bangers of hip hop going out. But they nail the drinks, and they bring this great vibe to it. So that very simple formula of stripping back to the basics, get back to what is honest and what is their own, and bring it to the fore.
Yeah, good music and good drinks are never going to go out of trend.
Absolutely.
And next thing which we both agreed on is classics that will never change. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to visit Dry Martini, Boadas, or Kronenhalle in Zurich. What they all have in common is that their bartenders have been there a lifetime. I think Pedro's been there for 45 years?
45 years.
Peter in Kronenhalle has been there for 40 years. In Kronenhalle, the youngest member of staff has been there for 10 years. You can imagine 40 years every day going to work, putting on your same suit, and just working that bar. And it's a real profession to them. And it's great for the younger generation to see, this is commitment to a bar. And sometimes we can be quite fickle, and there's a lot of fleeting bartenders moving around. But when you go into these bars, you know who you're going to get served by, you know the quality of drink you're going to get, and it's just oozes class.
Yeah, and this was one of the things that we saw as quite a crucial point to this. Yes, you have different trends that kind of come about, and they change with fashion. That is part of the dynamic of the world, and it's wonderful that we have these bars that do that. And it's I would hate to see new things stop to happen, but class never goes out of fashion. It's something that will endure, and these bars are they're landmarks within these cities, within our industry, and there are these things that we talked about Bramble being there for 10 years. A bar that's been there for 40, 50, Boadas is from the 30s, and it still maintains the character of what they are. They haven't felt the need to change for the sake of changing. And that's something that's really important, and we're going to touch on as the kind of summary of the kind of talk with this. But they really stuck to what was honest and what was simple and classic with them. And it's not that they've stuck and they've hit onto a good thing necessarily in what itself. It's just they've brought this honesty towards what they are, and it is something amazing about the idea of going into somewhere and being able to experience that experience. That somebody who's been there for 40 years is a bartender for life is something to kind of soak in. And so you're there as much at the bar, and you have to order a gin martini when you're at Dry Martini. There's a big recipe on the back bar. They're telling you what the drink is, but sitting there and having it made for you in the wonderful fashion they do is an experience. It makes it really part of visiting there is the warmth and kind of magic of the venues. And as Sheb said, there is something amazing about actually investing in somewhere. You don't always need to look for the grass is greener. It's always going to seem greener, but when you're in an amazing venue and you buy into it and it's a proposition that you accept, there's something great about sticking with that and just enduring with it and growing as the venue grows as well. So, this is kind of what we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about these venues as examples, but to us, the idea behind each of these things, these trends, was not necessarily the trend per se. It was the people. It's really it's people behind the bar and the people in front of it. So I don't think you can ever create something that's in a complete bubble. It's got to be reflective of the landscape. It's got to fit within people's wants and desires. Yes, you can anticipate those things. There is times when you might go, right, this is creeping towards a new area, and we can make something new and exciting that doesn't currently exist, but still fits within what people are looking for. But at the same time, you've got to make it about your customers. Bartending, it's never about us. It's not about putting drinks on pedestals. It's about reflecting things and get people excited, bring new people into the fold, and new trends are always about trying to seek that out, seek people that get excited and get them to understand what we all love. And that leads on to the picture in the middle. Can anybody see that, by the way? It's my favorite picture, and it goes in every presentation that I do. And it's a cat riding a unicorn, breathing fire through a rainbow, which makes perfect sense. But it's my way of summarizing the internet. And to me, this is, and you know, it's the point that always comes out about this. Yes, that's reflective of the internet, but it's also about the idea of spreading knowledge, education, and talking to people. And that's not, again, it's not just about each of us as peers, it's also about the guests and the people who are excited about the cocktails. You know, it's an amazing time for the world of as journalism as much as it is for the world of drinks. You're seeing, you know, new people writing about things, you're seeing constantly new bloggers, new things talking about projects on the other side of the world. It's made accessible. All of these new things that we can learn about and get excited by are becoming much more closer to us. So the new Nordic food movement, you know, that echoed throughout the world because people could read about it, hear about it, and take on the mentality about it. It wasn't about copying per se. It was about understanding what the trend was reflective of. And that really is the kind of final point. You know, these are personal stories. But behind each one of these bars, there were individuals, bartenders, bar owners, restaurateurs, people who were in love with the profession and wanted to look at a new side of it. And what they've done is they haven't gone, right, I'm going to focus on what I've seen in another bar around the world. What they've done is they've looked towards what the desire was. What were people looking for? What can they echo to create an excitement around those things? Be it in a new type of serve, be it a new type of venue, a new setting, all of the things that we spoke about before. It was about creating an honest platform, a purpose behind it. It had to be for the right reasons, and each of these bars, each of these bartenders have looked within themselves, looked at their own backgrounds, drawn on their experience, and reflected that in something that people can buy into. And that's us.